Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us at our second Wildfire Insurance Town Hall. My name is Andrew Stolfi. I'm the Oregon State Insurance Commissioner. It's my pleasure to welcome you this morning. So as we all work towards recovery, I want you to know that our hearts go out to each and every person affected by these tragic wildfires. You're in our thoughts. We are here to help you through this difficult time. I also want to say thank you to all the people who are helping our families, friends, neighbors, and communities rebuild. We appreciate each and every one of you for your service. So our goal today is to provide you with some important information you can use right now to work through this recovery process. Recovery will take time. This wildfire season has been extreme, and insurance companies are doing their best to serve their customers. Please be patient through this process. It will take time to settle your claim, and it will take time for repairs to begin. Though it may feel slow, taking your time may help you make sure you're able to recover all that was lost. So for our town hall meeting today, we've invited the same two insurance experts from the Division of Financial Regulation that joined us last month. Brian Fordham is our Property and Casualty Insurance Manager. He has been with the division for 7 years and has over 20 years of experience. Tricia Goldsmith is our Outreach and Advocacy Manager. Tricia's been with the division for 5 years and has served in the insurance sector for over 30. Brian and Tricia will help me answer your questions about the claims process, rebuilding, and potential scams to look out for. We've also invited and are really glad to welcome today Scott Van Hoff, Regional Flood Insurance Liaison from the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA. Scott has over 15 years experience in floodplain management in the Pacific Northwest and has been with FEMA for more than 6 years. Scott is here today to talk about the National Flood Insurance Program and why it's important to consider flood insurance after a wildfire. Leading up to today's meeting, we solicited your questions, and we're going to cover as many of those as we can today. We're also monitoring the Q&A box in this Zoom meeting, and we'll try to address those questions during the town hall as well. For those of you who are listening in by phone, you can text your questions to 971-345-1473. The number again is 971-345-1473. You can also find a recording of our last town hall where we talked about issues like price gouging, additional living expenses, and our wildfire emergency order, on our YouTube channel, which you can get to through the red wildfire button on dfr.oregon.gov. Like this town hall will be, that one is captioned in both English and Spanish. So let's start today with flood insurance. Now I'm going to turn it over to Scott. If you can please tell us a little bit about the National Flood Insurance Program and why it is important to consider flood insurance if you live in or near an area that's been damaged by wildfire. Scott, over to you.
Thank you, Andrew. The National Flood Insurance Program, first of all, it's available to anybody who lives in a community that participates in the National Flood Insurance Program. Fortunately, that's almost every community in the state of Oregon does participate. And you can buy flood insurance whether you live in a flood zone, a floodplain or not. So whatever flood zone you're in, insurance is available to you. Now, why we're talking about flood insurance after a fire is because now and for a few years into the future, communities downstream of these wildfire burn areas are going to be more vulnerable to floods than they were before the fire. We expect more frequent and larger flood events. And this is because the soil and the vegetation has changed. Vegetation has been burned off, soil has been charred by the fire, and the ground's natural ability to retain water and absorb rainfall events is greatly diminished. In fact, some of the soils become water repellent. And so the water is going to run off the landscape much more quickly than it did prior to the fire. So anybody that lives downslope of a burn area should expect there to be some increased risk of some form of flooding, sheet flow flooding, or greater stream or river flooding. So even if you're not currently in a flood zone, doesn't mean that you have nothing to worry about. You really should have a conversation with your insurance agent, reach out to your local community to find out what information is available about increased risk to this this flooding after wildfires. We do have a number of state and federal agencies working hard right now to try to determine or quantify what that increased risk is and what areas should be most concerned. So it is important that you consider getting flood insurance to cover any kind of flood or mud flow that might impact your house.
Great, thanks Scott for kicking us off with that great information. So we did get a couple questions that came in. I'll tee up for you. The first one is whether flood insurance covers the cost of obtaining land use permits, such as floodplain permit and building permits.
Yes, a common question. If your home is damaged by a flood event, then flood insurance can, in some circumstances, cover the cost of permits. And in particular, the one I'm thinking of is if your damage, it's your flood damage to your home is such that the local ordinance requires that you do improvements to your house to bring it into compliance with current building code. And that's in addition to simply repairing the damage to the home. Then there is a type of flood coverage within the National Flood Insurance Program policy that covers those cost of permits. And what I'm thinking of is a coverage called increased cost of compliance. So when you have a building compliance or building code compliance requirement placed on your rebuilding process, then that flood insurance policy can cover that cost of the building permits.
Thanks, Scott.
Yeah.
So next question that came in, and I'm sure you get this one quite a bit as well. Yeah. It's how much does flood insurance cost and what does it cover?
Yes, what does it cost? That's a very common question. Well, there are a number of factors that affect the individual costs that you would expect to pay for flood insurance. It's the characteristics of your home and where it's located. What flood zone are you in? What's the elevation of your home compared to the expected elevation of the surface of the floodwater at your location? What kind of foundation system is your house built on? And then, of course, what kind of coverage and deductibles you choose. Those are all going to be factors that are going to affect what the price of the coverage is. Now, what does it cover? Flood insurance has two basic coverages. We have coverage for the building, and we have separate coverage for your contents. So building is going to cover, your structure, your foundation, your walls, your built-in appliances, cabinetry, that sort of thing. And contents is your personal possessions, your furniture, your clothing, that sort of thing. The coverage amounts that are available for a residential structure is $250,000 coverage is the maximum for your structure, and $100,000 coverage for your contents. And
Scott, there's also a 30-day waiting period for flood insurance, isn't there? So this isn't something we should wait until we see that there's some bad weather coming before folks seek out flood insurance, right?
Absolutely, that is true. There's a 30-day waiting period from the time that you purchase your flood insurance until it goes into effect. So it is important that you take action now and not wait for the Weather Service warning about the winter storm coming, because then it's too late. So I do encourage you to take action soon if you live down slope or in a burn area that's been burned, and especially if you're anywhere near a mapped flood hazard zone. You should have a conversation with your agent right away.
Great. So we just had a question come in from the chat box from Julia. She's asking, we were already in a 100-year floodplain. Now we're told there are new restrictions adding 2 more feet to build up. Is this a new law?
No, it's probably not new. Well, it depends on what community you're in. Your building code requirements are determined by your local jurisdiction, your city or your county that you live in, whoever you're getting your building permits from. Every community that participates in the National Flood Insurance Program has to pass a flood damage prevention ordinance. And every community has a slightly different ordinance. And they have all of the requirements either meet or exceed FEMA's minimum standards. But almost every community in Oregon has a better than a minimum standard for flood safety written into their ordinance. And that 2 foot extra elevation, that's called a freeboard requirement. That's a very popular one throughout the country, but in particular in Oregon. Most communities do require that additional elevation in your new construction to be above that flood elevation. And that's particularly important in communities now that are downstream of these burned areas, because remember that flood map they're referring to, that base flood elevation, that was based on a study that was done before the land was burned and when you had a fully forested and vegetated watershed above you where your home is located. Now that it's been burned off, there's an elevated risk. So actually, you're much more likely in the next few years to get a bigger flood than what is shown on the current effective flood insurance rate map that FEMA produced some number of years ago. And of course, that depends again on which community you're in. So that 2 foot extra requirement is actually quite common. And that's just an extra safety factor that communities have chosen to adopt for safety standards, and also to obtain discounts on flood insurance for all their residents through our community rating system, which is a discount program for flood insurance.
Thanks for that, Scott. And Julia, thanks for asking that question. Another one that came in advance, does flood insurance policy cover landslides?
No, actually it does not cover landslides, but we do cover something similar that people sometimes confuse, and that's a mud flow. So the National Flood Insurance Program, you read our standard policy, it covers general conditions of overland flooding or mud flows. And a mud flow is a moving river of flowing mud. And so it doesn't really look like water. It looks like maybe more like a chocolate milkshake going downstream really fast. But the key differential there between a mud flow and a landslide is that it flows like water. That's a mud flow, and that is covered by your flood insurance policy. A regular landslide of blocky, chunky soil and rock coming down slope and damaging your home, that's a landslide, and that fall under the category of earth movement policy, and that is not an NFIP flood insurance coverage at all.
Thanks, Scott. A lot of great information. Want to point out to everyone, of course, you can get a lot more information online as well around flood insurance. If you're interested, please go to floodsmart.gov or talk to your local insurance agent or company to get more information on flood insurance. So Scott, one last question for you that came in as well. For folks that might be underinsured, they're not going to have enough to fully recover. I don't know if FEMA has any other assistance that can be provided in that situation so that an individual doesn't have to go and take out a loan to get assistance.
Well, yes, FEMA does have a variety of assistance that can offer survivors of this wildfire disaster or any disaster. We do have an intake process where you apply for disaster assistance. It's important to know that that is closing soon. In fact, closing on Monday for this particular disaster. So it is important that you do, that if you're interested in seeing if there's any kind of assistance available to you from FEMA, you must apply by Monday. I'd suggest do it today or tomorrow would be a good idea. As far as your question about the loan, you should understand that the process of determining what kinds of assistance we can give you does require, applying for a Small Business Administration loan. It's one of the many forms of disaster aid available to anybody in any kind of a disaster. So applying for that loan is part of the process of seeing what you qualify for. So it is important that you have that conversation with the FEMA person from individual assistance. They can help you evaluate what might be available to you. Every circumstance is unique. But again, that deadline for applying is Monday.
Great, thanks, Scott. So really important on that last point to highlight and stress the deadline to apply for FEMA assistance, which is coming up. It'll be Monday, November 16th. I'll mention the website and a phone number. for folks to go and get information and apply. It's disasterassistance.gov, and the toll-free number is 1-800-621-3322. So thank you again, Scott, and please hold on. If we get some more questions in the chat box, I'll turn those back to you as well. But let's turn now and get to some of the insurance-related questions or other insurance-related questions that have come in. We'll start with Tricia. If you could talk, please. We had a question that come in around whether insurance covers fires that are found to be started by arson.
Thank you, Andrew. The main thing to remember is that wildfire is covered just like any other fire is covered on your homeowner's policy. So wildfire is covered just like an electrical or a kitchen fire. Exclusions for arson are based on intentional acts of the policyholder. So if someone intentionally damages their own property, the insurance policy won't cover that loss. But damage caused by these wildfires is covered.
Good clarification, Tricia. Thanks. So next question came in around personal property claims. Someone asked if my insurance company offered to send a check for 75% of the policy limit for my personal items, and they say they will send me more money once I prove I replace the item. The person's worried that they will not get that additional money in the future and wants to know if this is how things are supposed to work.
Yeah, great question. So first, it's important to know that when you accept the first payment for your items, known as contents, you're not giving up the right to get more. You just need to follow a process to document how you replace personal items to get the additional payment. So each company is going to have their own process. What typically happens is the company will give you actual cash value for your personal items based on your inventory. If you think of it as what you would get if you sold the items the day before the fire. So that's going to be depreciated. It's not necessarily the same as the cost to replace it. That amount is called replacement value. So an insurance company will pay the replacement value up to your policy limits when you document that you have replaced the item by producing like a receipt. And that can take time and effort. So you can decide if you just want to take that first payment and call it good, or if you want to if you want to go back later and submit a claim for the replacement value. So some companies may pay a percentage of your contents coverage without requiring an inventory list, and only require the inventory if an additional payment is requested. So again, it will be handled differently between companies. So I would suggest working closely with your claims adjuster.
Replacing personal property can certainly be a daunting task. So we definitely encourage people to take your time, keep the communication lines open with your insurance company throughout that process. So Tricia, the next question came in. Says, I'm concerned my insurance company is taking too long processing my claim. What can I do?
Yeah, so it's going to be important to stay in touch with your company. Ask them for an estimate on how long they anticipate the process to take. Again, this will usually happen in steps. If you've been discussing it with your company, you feel like you've hit an impasse, I would suggest calling our advocates. You can get some questions answered, or you can file a complaint online. You can reach our advocates by calling 888-877-4894 or email dfr.oregon.gov.
Thanks, Tricia. And we've got that information up on the screen right there as well for folks. So as a reminder to everyone listening, if you're watching today's town hall on Zoom, you can post any questions you have down in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And if you're listening in by phone, you can text any questions to 971-345-1473. All right, so let's keep going with some questions we got here. The next one says, I learned that other parties could be listed on my insurance check. Are they entitled to the money I need to rebuild my home?
Great question. Yeah, sometimes when you enter into a business relationship with someone, they may require you to include them as an additional insured on your insurance contract. So if you have a mortgage, your mortgage company would have also required that you list them on your insurance contract. So someone who is listed as an additional insured is a party to the insurance contract. So they are entitled to portions of the benefits the contract provides. So to follow the mutually agreed upon contract, the insurance company will issue the check to all applicable parties for the specified benefits. Now, this is going to be different than someone who's listed as an interested party. An interested party is not a party to the contract because your business relationship with them, they're interested in knowing that about your proof of insurance and to be informed if the policy is active and current. But they'll get notices about your insurance policy, but they won't be a party to the insurance check.
Tricia, one more question for you, and then we'll bring Brian in to answer some as well. So this one came in advance. Person asked, I'm hearing that there are a lot of people out there trying to take advantage of wildfire victims. What scam should I be looking out for?
A great question. So there's 3 common types of scammers who take advantage of people after a disaster. There's government imposters who pretend to be from FEMA or another governmental agency. They call or email out of the blue and ask for your personal information. Remember, the government never calls or emails you out of the blue. When in doubt, I would suggest taking down the details, hanging up, and calling the government office to confirm the person's legitimacy. Another is contractor scams. So I would suggest always checking for valid licenses and checking references. You can do this at the Oregon Construction Contractors Board website, which is oregon.gov/ccb. And finally, there are unfortunately a lot of charity scams. The Oregon Department of Justice has excellent information to avoid charity scams. You can visit oregonconsumer.gov for more scam information from the Department of Justice. Also, our wildfire page that Andrew mentioned on our website, clicking that red button, they also have scam information that can help. So visit the dfr.oregon.gov. Again, press that red wildfire insurance button.
Great. Thanks, Tricia, very much. And stick around if we get more questions come in from you. So we're going to move, Brian, move over to you. So we got a question that came in around manufactured homes. Someone asked, what should I do if the insurance check is made out to me and the owner of my manufactured home park?
Thank you, Andrew. First off,
Brian, I can't hear you. I'm not sure if other people can as well. No, I'm hearing others can't hear you as well.
You want me to step in and help out on that one?
Go right ahead, Tricia.
On that? Okay. All right. So first, I would ask your insurance company what the check is for. It may be for your personal items, for the dwelling, for additional living expenses, for debris removal. It could possibly be a combination of those things. So I would discuss with your insurance company what the policy says about who should receive the benefit payments. Again, if you have questions after contacting your insurance company, I would reach out to our advocates at the 888-877-4894 for further discussion.
Great. Thanks, Tricia. And hold on, if Brian can't reconnect, we'll keep going with you for some of these questions that came in advance. So the next question, 2 of them are both around rebuilding. The first one says that, the process is going to take a while. How long do I have to rebuild my home? So Brian, we'll try you first. Nope. All right, Tricia, how long do people have to rebuild their home?
Okay. So different insurance policies have different rebuild times. So be sure to check what your policy says, or check with your agent or insurance company. Sometimes it says 1 year or 2 years. Sometimes there's not a particular mention of time to rebuild. So many insurance carriers are working with their policyholders on a case-by-case basis. And the division is also looking into a resolution with different options.
On that last point, Tricia, just let people know we're working with the insurance industry to see if we can get a more uniform, long-term rebuild time period for everyone. We will keep pushing to get that done and make an announcement and let everyone know about that as soon as we can. So next question also around replacement value. Tricia, it's replacement value seems to be what insurance company determines it to be. Local builders are more up to date on local costs and cost of lumber. So what should I do if the insurance company does not agree with the actual replacement cost? And is there a policy limit to replacement cost that outweighs how far money will stretch? Tricia, what can you share about that?
Yeah. So the replacement cost coverage on your policy is intended to cover the rebuild of your home up to the policy's stated limit. Your insurance company understands that the cost to repair or rebuild your home may change from the initial estimates as the rebuilding process begins. The main tip I would recommend is to not feel any pressure to settle. The process is going to take time, and if your insurance company is you're feeling any pressure from them, and before contractors had a chance to assess the damage, definitely contact our advocates. But again, this is going to take time, and it's going to be a process.
Absolutely, that process will take time, and it's a good reminder for everyone to try to be as patient as we can as we all work through this together. So I think last question, Tricia, if you can pitch in on this, came in around mortgage forbearance. The question was, my insurance company only released a small amount of the funds for my home because my mortgage is in forbearance. Are they going to use my insurance payment to make my mortgage payments current?
Okay, all right. So each situation will depend on several factors. If you're settling the claim and not rebuilding, the funds will be used to satisfy the mortgage and other liens, such as taxes. Any money left over after those expenses are satisfied and the mortgage company releases their interest is yours. If the plan is to rebuild, once you have a contract or construction plan established, the lender will typically place the funds from the insurance company into an escrow type account to pay the contractor as construction payments become due. The lender will typically require inspections throughout the process and will want you to sign documents indicating the work has been completed. During the process of rebuilding, you should continue to make your mortgage payment unless otherwise directed by your lender. The fire didn't change your mortgage. The obligation to pay your mortgage continues throughout the rebuilding process, just as if there had been no fire.
Thanks for answering those questions. We're just about out of time, but there's one more question that we keep hearing a lot, and I want to bring someone in to talk about this. It's Michael Mortar. He works at the division. He's got a lot of experience, both on insurance issues as well as a good background on building codes, and was with the Construction Contractor Board for a while as well. So Michael, the question I'd love for you to help answer today that we hear a lot, is about cleanup. And, there's been a lot out there about the state and FEMA working together to clean up home sites. An important question we keep hearing around that is, do I have to pay for that cleanup? Can you talk to that a bit? Well, I can share some information. So yes, wildfire debris cleanup can most certainly be very expensive. The good news is that on October 23rd, the Oregon legislature approved funding for some of our state agencies to begin a process to remove ash and debris. There's a lot of information. If you go to the county that you live in, especially, you can find some information as well as on the state's DEQ, Department of Transportation, and Emergency Management websites. You can also just visit wildfire.oregon.gov/cleanup to learn more about this state coordinated effort. Before doing any cleanup or hiring anyone to clean up wildfire debris, we strongly encourage you to review the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality, DEQ's guidance found on their website at oregon.gov/DEQ. Please remember to work closely with your county officials and insurance company in this cleanup process. The state and FEMA led process could result in a lot of savings for you, so we encourage you to look into this. So we've got a couple more questions that came in. Maybe we have time for one more. Scott, if you're still there, we had another question come in from someone. I was told when I applied for FEMA that I also had to apply with SBA.
Yes.
Is that true? Seem to be pushing for the loan. Person wants to know if that's a scam or if that's true.
That's a standard part of applying for individual assistance with FEMA for any kind of a disaster. The goal of the FEMA individual assistance staff is to help you identify all the resources you have available to you in your individual circumstance to help you recover from whatever the disaster is. So that includes examining what insurance coverage you have available, what kind of resources you have, what are your needs. And part of that process is applying for a small business administration loan. And only after you have done that will that then make you eligible for some additional sources of disaster assistance, like perhaps grants. And of course, this varies from disaster to disaster. It depends on what kind of event we're talking about, what kind of a declaration we have. But that applying for that SBA loan is a standard part of any individual assistance to the individual homeowner following a major disaster that has a presidential declaration. So that's not a scam. Now, applying for the loan doesn't necessarily mean that everybody's going to qualify, or that even if you do qualify, you're required to take the loan. It's just part of assessing what are you eligible for, what kind of recovery resources are available to you.
Thanks, Scott.
Yes.
So we've unfortunately run out of time for today. I think there are maybe a few questions in the chat, which we can try to respond to after the town hall. There is also our phone number, our email up on the screen for everyone. If anyone has any additional questions after this, please reach out to us, call us, send an email, and we will most certainly get you that information. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us. As I said earlier, we're going to be posting a recording of this town hall with both English and Spanish captions on our website in a couple days. Remember, if you have questions about your claim or your policy, to contact your insurance company, ask for more information. If you still have questions, if you have any concerns whatsoever after speaking with your company, call us, reach out to us, call our advocates toll free at 888-877-4894 or email dfr.insurancehelp@oregon.gov. Contact information is on the screen and available as well on our website at dfr.oregon.gov. And finally, just want to encourage everyone to make time right now to take care of yourselves, your families, your neighbors, as much as you can. Thank you. Stay safe, wash your hands, wear a mask, and we'll speak to you again soon. Bye now.